In recent days, the news has been largely dominated by President Macron's meeting to discuss the reaction, Europe's reaction to Donald Trump and his somewhat fanciful thoughts about the Ukraine crisis, the war with Russia, and how Europe should deal with this. Now, these talks have not really gone very well, to be quite frank, nor was there a high expectation, I would venture, that they would. Recently, we had a contribution at EU Today from Victor Rudd, who is a lawyer, a Ukrainian-American lawyer, and a leading commentator on these issues. And Victor actually preempted what's happened in Munich by emphasizing the fact that America has a history of actually working against Ukraine. I'm joined at the moment by Reinis Poznaks, a member of the European Parliament, Latvian, member of the European Conservatives and Reformists, ECR Group. Welcome. It's great to have you here. Also by Dmytro Shkurko. Dmytro is an ex-military man, a Ukrainian journalist, and Brussels and Europe correspondent for Ukrinform, which is the national news agency. Hi. I'd like to start with Reinis Poznaks. Could you give me your thoughts at the moment, because the events are still unfolding, on what took place in Munich?
I must say that the world will never be the same again, whatever the ending will be, because yeah, it's very difficult at the moment to find the right words. But from one side, it's nothing new. Like we were expecting that kind of things, and that's also the true that Europe has to step up and become stronger itself, and that's true. But the worst thing is what happened after the Munich conference. All this basically bringing back terrorists at the table, which is like very, as I said, hard to find the right words, because we had a lot of discussions here, of course, that we don't have to be angry on America. We just have to think what we can do as a Europe, and what we can put on the table. But it's actually quite sad feeling, actually, because a lot of countries, Latvia, for example, and Baltic countries, and Ukraine also, as we know, when we got back our independence, we did many things which we didn't like to do, actually, because America asked us to do that, promising to defend us forever, or we had this feeling, and now we feel a bit betrayed. That's true. Yeah, but it's at this time it's still very difficult to find right words how to describe what's happening. But from other side, I think it's also opportunity for Europe, and of course we're talking for 3 years already that we have to become strong ourselves as a Europe. But I think I can feel that in those last days the movement is like it really starts to move something. That's all I can say, yeah, at the moment.
With regard to the state of Europe's defences, this has been brought up time and time again over recent weeks. People are starting to realise how bad it is. I'm hearing that, well, Britain has one of the strongest militaries in Europe. Keir Starmer is going to send troops, jumping the gun there before that was even put on the table. Britain's only battle group at the moment is in Estonia. It's undermanned. There's a lot of health issues with these guys. They've been in the field a long time, and they have 2 days worth of ammunition. That, by the way, is Britain's only battle group, and that's in Estonia. I hear that we're going to be sending aircraft. Britain are going to commit to policing the skies. If Russia does not allow Western troops into Ukraine as part of the deal, well, good luck with that, guys, because we've not got so many aircraft at the moment, and we don't actually have much in the way of missiles. I dread to think how low those stockpiles are. So all in all, it's not really looking very good. Dmytro, what do you think? Can we in some way give the European leaders and the European Commission, if it were possible, some sort of reality check?
I believe that the second already meeting with European leaders, which we have today in Paris, is quite a clear evidence that Europe is already wake up. Europe is already on its foot. And the only question is how far Europe is going to go in supporting Ukraine, and what is the main point in supporting itself. It's how to say, ability and capability to defense, for defense against external aggression without assistance of the United States, which Europe realized for decades. So I think that Europeans already taken decisive steps, at least on the level of rhetorics. All these issues concerning increasing of defense expenditures, all these issues and discussion about sending the troops, and about some kind of necessity of creation some kind of European armed forces. This is already step ahead, from where we've been before. And by the way, the Munich conference and some statements, including from J.D. Vance and before the statements from the American side, which were announced during the defense ministers meeting in NATO, it was, how to say, clear signal for Europe that Europe needs to rely on its own more and more, and it's quite worrying, not for Europe but for let me say Euro-Atlantic solidarity, because no question, the United States have the full rights to decide the level and scale of their engagement in Europe. But still, if we are speaking about the current situation, then Europe is under the absolutely direct and obvious threat. This is, how to say, I don't want to use the word betrayal, because it is not. If we are speaking about the current the US administration and its statements and some actions, it's one thing. But I hope and I believe that we still are dealing with the United States, the great and strong nation, which was and used to be the leader of the democratic world. So the American society also will react somehow on that development. But still, as we see that now, from the American point of view, to leave Europe in a very difficult moment, as you rightly mentioned, it's quite a sad picture when we are speaking about the ability of some European countries in defending themselves. It's quite, I would not say it's unexpected, but it is not right time and right place to withdraw from Europe right now. Then we have absolutely imminent threat from the Russian side. It is my vision. But, it is not that hopeless because during the Munich conference, Ukraine is ready to support, and as Ukraine now have one of the most powerful and combat-ready armed forces in Europe, and this is like absolutely objective reality, Ukraine will not allow Europe down. Just We can be sure about that. Gary.
Do you think that Donald Trump exists in a kind of alternate reality? Or is he doing the right thing for America? Because he's putting America first, and we cannot blame him for that. That's actually what he was elected to do. But his understanding of the rest of the world about how other people think, he seems to have almost rose-colored spectacles when he talks about Putin. And he's not the first. George W. Bush, George Bush Jr. Said famously, "When I met Putin, I looked into his eyes and I could see his soul." I mean, are these people smoking something or what?
It's a question for me or for...
Yeah.
Dmytro. Yeah.
Oh, for me. Putin is a former KGB officer, but, as they said, there is not existing such a definition like a former KGB officer, so that he still is a KGB officer, and he was specially trained to convince some people using some kind of unverbal or some kind of psychological tools to do that. What we see now with Trump, it is not the first time already, because you see, we've seen that kind of behavior after the first meeting between Putin and Trump a few years ago, before the war. There was a situation absolutely the same. And in both cases, it could be described like humiliation for American side. Because right now is Russian dictator like winner, and the American side looks like a very weak one, and questioning the reliability of all the Western world of democracies in that regard. Because, Russians, when they started that aggression, they started it not only Ukraine only. If you remember good, before the invasion, it was like ultimatum, but it was an ultimatum for NATO to move the troops and move away to the borders of 1997. And right now Russian revitalized that idea, and they announced that exactly during the negotiations in Riyadh. They mentioned that NATO still remain the main threat to the Russian security, and so NATO need to leave all the countries which joined them after 1997. And it is an outrageous situation for US to leave Europe in such a situation. And right now, so it is not that important what I'm thinking about that. It's much more important what Americans are thinking about that, and what Ukrainian people are thinking about that in that regard, because Ukrainian people are the first victim of such kind of ideas. See that, and by the way, the Ukrainian president already gave quite clear answer to that. He mentioned that it looks like the leader of the great American nation is still living in a world of disinformation. And that kind of disinformation he is using now, it was created in Kremlin. It is exactly the narratives of a Kremlin propaganda, which was repeated by the president of the huge and great United States of America. And for my personal opinion, it's a great pity, because right now we see this great nation humiliated.
I'd like to ask Reinis, you're from Latvia, and so you must be watching all of this with a certain amount of trepidation, because you're on the front line. You're potentially on the next front line, aren't you? And this is something that it's something that we could wake up to tomorrow.
Yes, but from one perspective, it's still good because Europe really has to like wake up and become stronger and still, while Ukrainians are defending us, I think we are in not danger like today or tomorrow. And that's the main thing we have to do, just to be with Ukrainians as much as possible. And actually, Europe is not so weak as we would like to think as we are. We have thousands of aircrafts in the Europe, and actually, if we wanted to, we could close the skies in Ukraine easily. But I think that's the most important thing now with Europe. It's just to make clear that we will be with Ukraine till the end, till the victory. Of course, it will be a bit more difficult without United States because, and the main thing United States can provide is physical ammunition, because money Europe has actually or can find if they want, and that's what they now start to talk about, that we need to find like real money finally. And actually in that perspective we have to do not underestimate Ukrainians. I think they will surprise us quite soon with all the defense industry capabilities they developed in those years. And I think they are or soon will be able to manage or produce everything, almost everything what's needed by themselves. They just need the resources to do it, and that is the thing which Europe can provide. Because what is Europe doing, I think, a bit wrong now. It's like panicking why we are not at the table, but why we have to be. They can discuss whatever they want with the terrorists, but still the agreements can be made, but the implementation, it's still Ukraine and Europe. So I think that in that perspective, we don't have to panic, but just to be ready.
Do you think Donald Trump is looking at all of this not as a world leader, but as a businessman eyeing up opportunities?
Yes, he is, and that is the problem. Yeah, that he is doing it as a businessman, and I think actually after all this, I hope will end in a good way. There will be huge hangovers in United States. It will be the biggest one, because and the problem is, or the difference maybe, is how we see what is great America for us and what is great America for him. For us, the great America is a leader of and policeman of the democracy in the world. For them, it's a bit different. And in my opinion, what differs a great country from a big country is its allies. And America is losing them like quite fast, and instead to become of really great again, it will become just a big country. So that's why I think actually the biggest hangovers after this, say, party will be in United States.
Dmytro?
Yes, I absolutely share that point of view, but I want to add that if we consider President Trump like a businessman, from the tactical point of view, it's quite bad tactics. When in a middle of the business deal, he trying to to refuse from its closest allies and to make them hostile even, and this is quite a cynical approach, because you remember that President Zelensky rejected the agreement of the US on the raw materials exploration, and it was not occasional, because you see, in that regard, the American side proposed to Ukraine some kind of absolutely formal documents. There was like a demand to return all the assistance Ukraine already received from the American side, and no single word about the future guarantee security or about the future. Excuse me, or about the future military assistance from American side. So that from the business point of view, it's a cynical and it is absolutely failing tactics. So then you're starting speak with your partners in such a manner. Another point is what we have not seen in Ariad, but before that, it was quite a load statements from the American side, saying that Ukraine have no chance to return to the border of 1914, not saying about the borders of 1991, and that Ukraine have no right to join NATO, and what kind of troops would be deployed during a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine. It would not be under the NATO umbrella. You know, that arises a question of, excuse me, let me be straight about the future of NATO. Because from that point, we have seen that the slogan, the peace through strength, play with a little bit another angle. Because in that angle that American side representing, the strength is the main point. But again, in Europe, in the European system of values, all this was such a definition like a rule of law. And that means that like Ursula von der Leyen said hundreds of times, we cannot accept returning to the world the might means right, because we need to preserve the world. Our values is premature. So right now we have a question. I wanted to ask that question to NATO Secretary General, but I failed to do that. Still, is NATO still the alliance of values? Because if it is not, and if it is like defending the right of the strong nation to dictate to the smaller nations and to its neighbors, then the future of that alliance is very, very doubtful. And we can expect that something new will be created, because Europe could not be left unprotected. But it is not even a philosophical issue, because what we see now, if you consider the public rhetoric by the President Trump, they are quite similar, these rhetorics which President Putin has concerning the Russians' neighbors and concerning the supremacy in Europe. So that we are facing now, all of us, huge problem. And I believe that EU will be able to react properly and to have some kind of very reliable response to the new situation. Gary.
There's been a lot of discussion about a European army, of course. When I first arrived in Brussels 20 years ago, I remember on my first day somebody handing me an orange scarf, because the Maidan was very much in the news at that particular point. And that kind of spurred the debate on a European military structure. How would that work? How would a European military structure work if the European Commission was in charge of it? This is something which fills me with horror, to be quite honest. I don't see, what would it do? Would it try to recreate NATO? But if that were to be the case, the Commission would not be able to have its hands in control. And I think that time and time again over the crises that I've seen in 20 years in Brussels, it's the inability of the Commission to come to a consensus, to make a decision quickly, which has always exacerbated the problems.
I think it's the problem with NATO, and actually it was the same with the European Union. It's all unions at one point are getting too big, and have different problems in different regions, and now it's happening actually the same, that all the Eastern Europe of course understands all the risks and they're ready to, I don't know, eat less, but buy weapons, but it's totally opposite in the further from the Russian border you are, the less people understand the risks. But I think that actually the future will be kind of alliances inside the alliances, and we also saw actually in the case of Ukraine that in even if not all the NATO make some decisions, that there are alliances inside the NATO who do, I don't know, deliver planes or doing things like that. But I don't think that European army definitely will not be a solution, because we are still 27 independent countries, and it's very hard to imagine how to manage, because for army you need to have one country basically to manage all the commanding, and it will be just difficult for Europe. But kind of unions, and I think Eastern and Nordic Europe, we just have to do it anyway. We cannot allow to wait and see what's going to happen with NATO, and will be end or not end. We just have to already make the coalitions and cooperations. And also we are small countries. We can spend 20% of GDP, and it will not be enough like to protect. So there is not much other options than to do coalitions, at least with those who understand the risks at the same level as we do. So
it's also the elephant in the room, of course, that were there to be an EU command structure militarily, this would, as is the tradition, and actually according to the European Constitution, or the Treaty for the Functioning of the European Union as it is now, unanimity is essential. How would that work when you have, for example, people like Viktor Orban and Fico, for example? How would they react, do you think, if a European army there were a discussion, shall we send this army into action against the Russians? Shall we carry out a military operation that does not particularly suit Russia? How would Orban and Fico react to that? You think you'd get unanimity?
I think, yeah, exactly. That's the problem. It's not only about the army. We already can see it about the support for Ukraine, and that's raised all the questions what to do in the European Union in the future, because now, as you know, we have the veto rights for each country, and from one side, it's very easy now to say that let's cancel and these veto rights and just go to majority. But from other side, from small countries like ours, it's this veto rights is like very crucial to influence some things. Otherwise, we will be just overvoted by the big countries in any other questions. So we have to find solutions how to go further with that situation. Now we have to find some, I don't know, creative solutions how to avoid the blocks from Orban and similar politicians and countries, but still we have to reorganize things just to be sure in future that that one country are not able to play with other countries' life, I would say. Yeah.
I want to just kind of come to an end really where we started. And you know, the writer and lawyer Victor Rudd, and his argument that the United States has never been really a friend to Ukraine. Dmytro, would you care to comment on that? How do you feel about that? Do you feel that the US has let Ukraine down, not just potentially now, but in the future? Oh, sorry, in the past, should I say?
First, I'm not completely agree with the topic that U.S. Have been never the friend of Ukraine, because obviously there are a lot of examples then the U.S. Assisted. For instance, during the fight of the Soviet Union against the German Nazi, it was a huge assistance from American side, and nobody know where we'll all will be, including Europe, if not that kind of American assistance. But you need to remember that now Russians trying to, how to say, privatize the victory in the Second World War, but still, you know, Ukrainians made a very huge contribution into that kind of fight. And I can say you that right now, because the fascism from the 40s in the previous century have been reborn right now in Russia, we Ukrainians now trying to protect all the Europe against that kind of a new wave of the chauvinism and fascist ideology. If you look attentionally to what kind of rhetorics they have on their TV, I mean Russians, and what kind of polls they have among their population, you can understand that the problem is not even in Putin. The problem is that the wide at least large part of the Russian population supported his imperialistic ideas. So that you see, right now in that regard, we, as before, rely to the US assistance, and we continue to rely on the US assistance because, as I mentioned before, we consider not the current American administration, but US as a such, as a huge and very powerful democratic nation. And I don't believe and I don't trust that the American people will so easily refuse for that kind of role they're playing in the free world. I understand it could happen everything. Right now, US very quickly losing its position as a leader of the free world. But you know, it will be impacted somehow on the everyday life of the ordinary Americans. If we look back, not on the Ukrainian situation, but on European economy and relations with the US, we can see easily that we now on the brink of the tariff war. It is a 0-0 sum game where nobody will be winning, and the relations between the European Union and the United States could be damaged very substantially. And that will exactly worsen the everyday life of the ordinary, of course, Europeans, but Americans also. I don't think that it will be not, how to say, reflected on the activity of the current American administrations, but because they now doing everything possible and everything they want, but it is exactly not the making America great again. I think so.
I'm going to leave the final word, actually, Reinis Poznaks. How do you think this is going to go? Will the institutions remain firm in their stance? I believe they would. The European Parliament has certainly since 2004 always been very supportive of Ukraine. Britain will always be very supportive of Ukraine. I believe that the majority of people in the United States would would not like to see that support withdrawn by the US. But this is a very, very dangerous moment that we're in. There's no question about that. How do you see this panning out now?
To be honest, I don't believe that they will make any deal at the end. I just, it's for, and also I think the one thing that Trump probably don't understand about Ukraine, that he thinks, and Putin obviously are sure that it works like that they both agree and country take it. So in Ukraine it's a bit different. There are still at least 500,000 armed guys who are fighting on the front line, and they are not, of course some of them are, but a lot of them are not like professional militarists, but it's former students, professors, singers and workers who are fighting for their country. And if they will not accept the deal, so nothing's gonna end. Ukrainians are world champions of guerrillas fighting. So historically they basically invented it. So it's not so easy, and I think Zelensky understands that and feels that. So it's a bit difficult and different in Ukraine and maybe in other countries. So just peoples, not only Zelensky cannot make a deal. So peoples have to accept it also. Otherwise, it will not work anyway.
Absolutely. I want to thank you both for joining this afternoon and giving up so much time, particularly at lunchtime. And I know that you're both going to be busy this afternoon. There's a lot going on at the moment. Thank you again, and let's keep our fingers crossed. Things do tend to work out in the end, and I believe that Putin is going to lose this one.
For sure.
He will, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.